And having patience, it's about focusing on the milestones and not the miles.
Welcome to the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann, and this is the show where we bridge the gaps one story at a time. And today I have with me Andrea Matthews, Dr. D as she is so affectionately called. She is the president as well as the book strategist for Claire Alden Publishing, as well as a director of Office of Diversity and Inclusion of Wayne State's Medical School. She is amazing, y'all, and we have her right here on the couch with us. How you doing,
Kai? I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I am amazing now that you're here.
All right, sounds good.
You have been so busy in this past, I don't know, how
this
long?
Past year at least.
It's been longer than that. It's been longer than that. You have been wearing like 50 million hats. You've been doing everything. You're every woman. I want to know, when did you become every woman?
That's a really good question. I would say that my life shifted into overdrive probably about 2012. Mm-hmm. Ironically enough, it corresponded with me connecting with the Motown Writers Network, writing and publishing my first book, et cetera, et cetera. So really 2012 was when my life shifted. I began traveling, so I know, a lot of people follow me and see about my travels, around the country. So 2012 was roughly when things started to shift, and then really by 2014, it was at rapid speed.
Really, really, really. Now, the person who was Andrea, not Matthews, mm-hmm. because you're recently married.
Yes.
But the 20-year-old Andrea, what was she like?
That's a really good question. So actually at 20 years old, I was already married. I was already a mother. So the person I was then, I would say I was still pretty shy. I was a shy little girl growing up. I didn't talk a lot. And for me to say that now, people are like, really? You wouldn't know that. But I was a shy girl. So I was, really introverted. And in my quiet moments, I am surprisingly still introverted. I like those quiet moments. I like, being to myself, to think about the day and to reflect on things. So that 20-year-old was a lot more like that, and really just focused on being a mom, being a wife, and taking care of home. That was my primary focus, and then finishing my schooling.
Wow. Now you have become this I want to say, and I'm speaking from a place that I see vision-wise.
Okay.
This iconic person who has really delved into diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
When did that start for you, and why?
That's a good question. So as far as when it started, I would say that it probably started in undergrad, because undergrad was more of a self-discovery process for me. But my official role in diversity and inclusion didn't come until 2006. That's when I actually joined the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. It had a different title at the time, and again, just keeping up with the time and the culture and the landscape of higher education. The name of the office has changed several times, but that was my first official introduction into diversity and inclusion. From 2006 forward, it's had a few evolutions as to what that has become. But as a part of that, around 2011, my colleague and I created what's known as the 25 Types of Diversity. And that is a tool that we've used now to talk about diversity on all different levels, whether it's at the university. I presented it with marketing firms. I've talked about it at a national conference and other opportunities, but it's a tool that you can use to do small group discussions. Is something that that you and I can sit here and talk about and look at all the different types of diversity. It was created primarily because most of the time when people hear diversity, they think race and ethnicity. Mm-hmm. And diversity is so much larger than that. So we created the 25 types of diversity to really talk about the primary characteristics, those things that typically you can see when you look at somebody, but also the secondary characteristics, which are much more robust. And those are the things that you wouldn't necessarily know about someone, but it's what they most closely attribute to. Mm-hmm. So that's the tool that was created that really kind of opened the world of diversity up for me. Now, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, the way that I like to describe that is diversity is being an underclassman in high school invited to an upper class dance.
Oh, wow.
So diversity is an underclassman being invited to the upperclassman's dance. Inclusion is actually being invited by your crush onto the dance floor.
Okay.
So diversity just gets you in the room.
Right.
Inclusion actually involves you in the action.
Wow.
So that's how I like to describe diversity and inclusion, because most of us went to high school.
Right.
You know, most of us have some type of understanding of that social aspect of high school.
Right.
And, you know, whether we were the popular kids, whether we were the wallflowers, we know what it's like to be a part of the action or to want to be a part of the action. And we also know what it's like to stand on the wall and look at everybody else participating.
Right, that's true.
That's really what diversity and inclusion is about. It's not just about having the right folks in the room, but what are you doing with them once they get in the room?
Right. So tell us, how has diversity and inclusion kind of affected your life?
Okay, that's a great question, because for a long time I compartmentalized. And what I mean by that is I had different hats on, just as I do now, but you know, I was mom over here, and that's where I stayed, and I was this person over here, and that was just in that area, and I was somebody else over here. And what diversity has allowed me to do is to merge or to re-engage all of my various identities. So whereas when I was at Wayne State, I talked about Wayne State, and that was it. I didn't talk about being an author, I didn't talk about, you know, being a minister or anything else. I just talked about this. And what it's allowed me to do is to merge all of the things that I'm involved in and be okay with it.
Right. Now, good. I'm glad you said that, and be okay with it, because a lot of us do that, where we compartmentalize our lives.
Yes.
And then when we try to kind of integrate them all, we don't really feel comfortable in doing so. So how were you able to do that?
It starts with accepting who you are. If you are not comfortable with your own voice, you will not be comfortable with you. And I'll give you a clue. So if you have trouble listening to yourself, so whether it's, you know, on a voicemail recording or whether it's a video or whatever else, if you have trouble even just listening to your voice, you're not there yet.
Wow. That's a good point, though. That's a good point.
I had trouble hearing my own voice. I didn't want to hear my own voice. You know, for a long time, even though it doesn't really sound like it now, for a long time, I thought my voice was too deep. I thought, well, I don't sound girly enough, or I don't sound this or that, because I'm looking at society and the expectations of society and trying to fit in. Because each of us, we all have some legitimate needs. Right. You know, the need for acceptance, the need for belonging, the need for significance. Those are legitimate needs that pretty much everyone has. But how we try and address those needs is where we get into some trouble. So, you know, accepting who you are has to come first, because, you know, too often we're looking for other people to validate us. But we have to start with accepting ourselves. And when we become comfortable with who we are, hearing our own voice, knowing and accepting that voice, then we start to move into other areas and begin to build and grow from there.
Wow. So you become one who loves your voice now.
Yes. I don't mind.
I see that big smile.
I don't mind hearing my voice. I don't mind, you know, seeing and watching myself on video. That's a part of, you know, that evolving, that transformation process. How will you know what else you need to do, what else you need to study, how else you need to train yourself, how to get better? Because, again, good is the enemy of great. You can be good in something, but how do you take it to the next level and become great?
Right.
And you have to evaluate yourself in order to do that.
True. I love that. So when we think about everything that is Dr. D, you mentioned before that you are a minister.
Yes.
How do you, and this might sound kind of maybe off kilter, but when we think about diversity and inclusion, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time saying diversity, but when we think about that and we think about ministers, there is a kind of like uncomfortableness in that. So how do we as ministers be able to include everyone within that flow of diversity?
You start with the basics. Do you love people? If you don't love people, you are in the wrong business. You got to start there. If you love people, it doesn't matter who they are, what they look like, what baggage they have, what baggage they don't have. You know, none of that matters. And, you know, each of us is diverse. You know, even sitting here looking at us, because, you know, our skin complexion looks the same, we have very different stories. We have very different lives. You know, we might have the same general culture, but what are the subcultures that we attribute ourselves to? How is that different? We can sit here and talk for hours about all the similarities and differences, and again, we look pretty similar. So just think about how that conversation grows and evolves with other people who don't look like us, who don't sound like us, who don't do things in the same way that we do. A lot of the technology that we enjoy came about as a result of the needs of diverse individuals. When we think about Skype and FaceTime and those things, that came about to help address the needs of those who have diversity of abilities, because I don't say disabilities, but diversity of abilities. When we think about, dragon dictation, which is great for authors, it came about as a result of those who needed that type of technology because they couldn't type. They were limited in their mobility and things of that nature. So diversity has affected all of our lives in ways that we don't stop to think about. Even things like, the electronic toothbrush. It was created for mobility needs, but, now most of us have an electronic toothbrush. You can get it at CVS. That's why every CVS or every Walgreens in the country, carry simple things like that. But it came about as a result of diversity. So it's not as limiting as we like to think. But again, I talk about the diversity continuum. It starts, with ignorance and goes all the way to humility. But if you think about that continuum, where you are along that continuum continues to shift and change in each season. So just because in this season you might be at one point, the next season you should be, hopefully, further along, and again, continuing to be this lifelong learner.
Now, you said something that felt really good to me. And that was going from ignorance to humility.
Yes.
Let's talk about that humility piece. What does that look like for one who's come from ignorance to that humility piece? What does that look like?
So it's it's a total of 13 steps that my team has outlined along that continuum. It starts with ignorance and, moves all the way to humility. Like I said, the thing that most people talk about is cultural competence. And that is not even at the midpoint. It's somewhere along the middle, about maybe number 7 and number 8. So it's closer to humility, but it's not quite there yet. So, I have issues with the term competence because it indicates a level of completion, if you will, and we will never have it all. We will never know it all. So you got to continue to push past that. But right before you get to humility, you have fluency. So with fluency, it's similar to learning a language. And when you learn the language, when you truly know a language and you're fluent, you know how to read and write in that language. So you know how to engage in conversations around whatever that topic is. So being fluent and knowing, again, back, when you're dealing with literacy and knowledge and awareness and respect and responsiveness, and that deals with the bystander effect. And, you've got lots of different topics within there, but fluency is that last step before you get to humility. So you've got to know the language, you've got to know how to engage with people and meet them where they are. And then humility ultimately is just remaining teachable. Even when you get there, even when you're fluent, and I know a lot of different terms and a lot of different techniques and strategies and all sorts of things because I've been doing this for a while. But again, you still got to remain humble because I can learn something new tomorrow that I did not know. I continue to grow, I continue to learn, and even as we can look at technology changing every 5 to 6 months. Got all these new phones coming out, and that's great. But other areas and other fields continue to grow and evolve as well. And we have to remain teachable and continue to learn for as long as we're on this earth.
Wow. We're going to let that marinate just a little bit.
All right.
We're going to go on break. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Focus, the state or quality of having or producing clear definition. Focus One Entertainment is the premier videography company in the Midwest. We specialize in weddings, corporate events, documentaries, sporting events, and films. Regardless of the scope or budget, we approach every project the same way, by capturing and clearly defining your vision. Contact us at 313-444-3638 or www.focusoneEntertainment.com.
and welcome back to the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann, and I am sitting here with Dr. D, and we are having an amazing conversation. We're talking about diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
We are talking about Dr. D herself. You just recently have a new grandbaby.
Yay!
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How's that feel?
It feels fabulous.
Does it?
Yes, it definitely is a new experience. I love babies anyway. I mean, who doesn't love babies? The best sound in the world is the sound of a giggling baby.
Right.
Oh my goodness. So that's wonderful all in itself. But it really does add a new phase to your life.
It does, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness.
It does. So you've gone from this mother to now this grandmother, but in between there's so many hats that you put on.
Yes.
How have you been able to just transition into each role that you play? How easy or how hard has it been?
Good question. I think it has been easy only because I've learned to juggle so many things for so long. So when you get in the juggling act, it doesn't matter if it's plates or pencils or whatever it is, you just learn how to keep it moving. But I think that, I'm a mother of 5 biological children. So it was always a house full of people, whether it's cousins, nephews, whoever coming over, it was always a house full of people. So I'm constantly, juggling. Time management, I became an expert at. I love my color-coded calendar.
Right.
So things like that are really helpful for me staying on top of things. I'm getting to the point now, I was just sharing with someone that I'm probably at the point where I could probably use an assistant, whether it's virtual or not. But, just learning how to manage time is probably the best thing that has allowed me to wear multiple hats, keep up with everything, and still be in my right mind.
Right. And so how have you, as being a woman, being an entrepreneur, being a director, being a grandmother, being all these different things, how hard has it been for you to take time for you to replenish all of that so that you can give back to all those people that you do?
So I'll be transparent. Until very recently, did not take time for me. I had, I'll say, a health scare a few years ago that kind of slowed me down for a minute and made me do some self-evaluation and realize the necessity for self-care. Because again, we can't take care of anyone else effectively if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Right.
So, I had that moment, and then I've got a really good team right now around me that reminds me, you need to take a day off, or you need to sit down and do nothing.
Right.
So it helps having people around you who are accountable to you and not afraid to tell you when you mess up. If you got a bunch of yes men or yes women around you, you got the wrong team.
Right.
So having someone that doesn't mind telling you about yourself is a necessity. So, that's great. That's great.
So in the aspect of taking care of yourself and replenishing yourself, what are some things that you have found easy for you to do or to help you get in that relaxed state? Because I know it could be kind of hard, you doing all these different things.
Yes.
And to sit down, it's like, oh, what?
You're right. What helped me was some years ago when I did a 40 by 40 list.
Oh, wow.
So my 40 by 40 list made me actually sit down and think about 40 things that I wanted to do before my 40th birthday. And it's in sitting down and doing something just as simple as that showed me some things that I could do as far as self-care. For example, one of the things on the list was to get a massage once a month. Okay, even though I only made it from January to April, it still was good because, January to April, those was the bomb month because I'm sitting there and I got somebody else relaxing my muscles and, releasing the tension. So, simple things like, if you enjoy massages, getting that massage, going to the movie theater, watching your favorite show, or just, things that you enjoy. Because again, as mothers, we're always giving, we're always making sure the kids got the shoes they need, they got this, they get to the, the shows, the basketball games, and everything else that's going on. But what is it that you really need for you? And I'm often reminded by my wonderful husband that, you go to work all those hours, so take some time and do something that you enjoy doing. So whether it's something as simple as, again, the massage, getting your nails done, going to your favorite store, do something for you And it's great if you can do it once a week. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. If you can't, then every 2 weeks. But definitely don't go more than a month. Don't go more than 30 days without doing something for you. Right. So every month, plan something for you.
Right. Now lately, we were kind of talking a little bit before we got started here, and you have been all over the country. You've been doing speaking engagements. You've been quite busy, and you've been living out of a suitcase.
Yeah, couple times.
But how has all of that, like, kind of catapulted you, or maybe even just changed some of the ways that you do things with regards to like business or taking time out or whatever? How has all of the traveling like changed something about you?
So as a young person, my grandparents exposed us to a lot. You know, we got to travel as kids. We got to see, you know, the big pretty houses and go around and watch all the Christmas lights and stuff like that. So exposure as kid. I'm always telling my students, you know, that you have to be exposed to something greater than you. The same is true for us older folks. You know, we need to be exposed to things too. So the travel really has exposed me to different cultures, to different cities, to different ways of doing things. Because again, each metropolis, each large city you go into, it operates a little bit differently from the other. The people are a little bit different. They talk different. They, you know, sound different. They engage in different ways. The food is different. So you have all these different exposure opportunities, and taking the moment to take it in, relax, enjoy the scenery, and understand that, wow, okay, you know, jot this down. What's next? Right. So what has allowed me to do, even though I travel a lot for recruitment and speaking engagements and things of that nature, what it allows me to think about is, what do I want to do next? And now that I'm almost at an empty nest, you know, I'm looking forward to traveling for leisure. You know, I travel a lot for business, but I'm looking forward now to adding traveling for leisure. Where do I want to go? What do I want to see? Where do we want to go? What do we want to see next? And that's the fun part of it. So exposing, you know, ourselves to something that you haven't seen before. You know, if you've never seen the sunrise over the ocean, oh my goodness. Beautiful, absolutely.
Beautiful. Yep. So when we talk about spirituality, because I want to get into that as well, because you are a minister, and if I got you here on the couch, might as well ask you some questions.
All right.
When we're talking spirituality, what is it in 2017 do we mean when we say we're spiritual?
So spirituality means different things to different people. So you ask 10 people, you will get 10 different responses. For me, spirituality speaks to not religion, because religion, you know, religion's one thing, but spirituality is really about your relationship with God. And again, depending on who you are, that could look very different from somebody else's experience, but that's what spirituality is at its core. And I think in 2017, you know, not to go down the rabbit hole, but you know, a lot of people are looking for that supernatural experience. They don't want church as normal. They don't want just the routine experience that some of us may have grown up, you know, going to church on Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter, or going to church every Sunday, or Sunday school, or Bible study. They don't want just the routine and the tradition of those actions. They want a relationship, and they want a supernatural experience. So we have to, as ministers, make sure that we are constantly on our faces and hearing the voice of God so that we can lead them and direct them to a closer relationship with our Heavenly Father.
Right. That's I'm glad that you said that you even mentioned that most of us now that are really seeking that relationship, we're looking for that supernatural piece of it. And a lot of people have gone through where they've been sitting in churches and they haven't gotten that experience. And so when you said that now that, you know, the ministers have to make sure that they're on their face and they're seeking God in that way, what are some things that you have been like praying for that would help lead other people into that supernatural experience?
So for me personally, I've got to have time reading the Word. You know, just bare bones basics. I'm not going to be able to recognize the voice of God if I haven't read His Word, because that's ultimately how I know it's His voice. God's not going to contradict His Word. So, you know, I've got to read His Word to know His voice. So that's basic. Praying is not just, you know, genie in a bottle Christmas list. Gimme, this is what I want. it's a conversation. So just like we're sitting here today having a conversation, one person talks, the other person listens. And then it's time for the other person to talk, and the other person listens. So it's a conversation. So if your prayer has only been one-sided, and you haven't either heard a response or, received a response, and God speaks in lots of different ways, but if you haven't gotten the reciprocal conversation in prayer, then you need to keep at it until you do, or get some, wise counsel. Okay, what do I need to do differently? Because again, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same response, then, it's time to change some things up. I ain't gonna call nobody insane. Right?
Well, I'm glad you brought that in there too, because then we can talk about not insanity per se, but mental health.
Yes.
And what a lot of people are kind of dealing with in this day and age. There's a lot of things that's going on. Our president is he's all over the place and leading by example. And what I mean by that is him leading by example. We have a lot of things that are happening in our world today that I believe are because of leadership. What do you think are some ways for us to kind of come back together? Do you believe there is a way for us to come back together?
There's always a way for us to come back together, and maybe that's a little bit of optimism in me. Always a way for us to come back together. It always starts grassroots. Back to community, back to neighborhoods. Who took the neighbor out of neighborhood? So caring about that other person. We've had lots of acts of kindness recently, with the tragedies that have been going on with, the hurricanes and with other incidents happening around the country. You see bystanders jumping in and, not necessarily wanting to be the hero, but being the hero anyway, saving lives and doing things like that. That reminds us that, okay, humanity still has, its qualities that are worth, hanging your hat on. So it starts with individuals wanting to make a difference, wanting to step out of their own comfort zone and impact the life of somebody else. What is it that I could say to encourage somebody? Because everyone needs at least one caring individual in their lives. That's not always the parent. That's not always the auntie. That's not always, the neighbor down the street. So who is that one caring individual? And if you can't identify somebody, then maybe you should be that somebody for someone else.
Right.
So it starts at the individual level, and the more we rebuild community, starting with those people in our immediate sphere of influence, that's how we make a difference. If everybody commits to, being a caring individual for at least one other person, we'll see a big difference. But too often, we've been programmed to only be concerned about ourselves. We live in a selfie generation. We live in a selfie world. So, we're encouraged to think about ourselves. Technology removes us from having to have a face-to-face conversation with someone, but those are the things that we need to break us out of that isolation.
I think sometimes we have good intentions when we begin with a thing, because I believe that us with the selfie generation, it started out being a good thing because we did need to get back to self, in some aspects of it, but then we kind of went and took it overboard and it was like me. Right, but when we think about what's happening in this particular generation, what do you see is some of the things that we may need to start really looking at that maybe no one's looking at? If you think about it from your own perspective, and I'm quite sure you've been talking to your husband, to your friends about some things that you think that may need to change or could do better.
The one thing that I would say is be the person that you wish you had when you were younger. We each have a story. We each know what we wish that we would have had in our lives, or that person that we wish could have told us X, or took us Y. Whether it was, I always wanted to go to the zoo and pet ponies, or whatever it was that you wanted to do. Be that person to somebody else. Give them that experience if you're able to. I think the giving back, that has to continue. We have to. We're not blessed for ourselves. It's never about us.
True.
We're blessed to be a blessing to others. So we have to make sure that we're making those efforts to give back and not just try and, store up for ourselves.
Awesome. Well, we're going to take a quick break. This is the Conversations with Mann show. I'm your host, Mann. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello, Detroit, and welcome to the secret society of twisted storytellers, where real people tell true stories live on stage. No notes, no poetry or Dr. Seuss, just the truth from their lips to your listening hearts and minds. Stories so raw and revealing, so hilarious, human and healing, they will move and inspire you. Take a break from what you usually do. Come out, connect, meet old friends and new. Every third Friday at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Visit www.secretstorytellers.com to watch videos and for info and tickets today.
Iology Inc., an innovative, navigational, and creative company that works with its clients from the inside out. We believe in walking our clients hand in hand, from concept creation to brand management. Our innovative process assists our clients in conceptualizing, developing, building, rebuilding, or restructuring their lives, businesses, and brands. Are you ready to be seen, heard, and remembered? Contact us at iologyinc.com.
And we are back. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann, and today we're sitting here and we're talking with Dr. D. She has given us the all in all, the everything. Now, when I think about you, I think about this woman who is out in the world doing her thing, and you're helping a lot of people. We were talking a little bit earlier, and you were talking about the process of medical students and getting them into school. Yes. And I'm thinking that is one lengthy process. You have to have patience in everything that you do. Have you always had patience?
I actually don't think of myself as a very patient person, but I guess in different aspects I can be. It's funny, I don't think of myself as being very, very patient, but when it comes to work, again, when you're familiar with the process, you just know all the points along the journey. So in having patience, it's about focusing on the milestones and not the miles.
Right. Oh, that's good. That's real good.
So if you focus on the milestones, it's like, okay, what's the next step? Okay, what's the next step? And before you know it, you've made it a great distance, but you're not focusing on that distance. You're focusing on that next goal, that next tangible target.
Right. Now, you are also a book strategist.
Yes.
And with life, we have to have strategy. How many miles or how many milestones would you say that you have had to strategize and be patient at, or not be patient because it didn't call for that?
Too many to count. If you can go back and count, the different transitions that you've gone through in life, that's wonderful. But mine has been an exponential process with wearing so many different hats and serving in so many different roles and capacities. It's it's on the job training. Sometimes you get thrown a curveball and you just gotta grab it and run with it.
Right.
So, too many to count, definitely, but just to sit and think about just some of the things that have happened and some of the ways that I've grown by leaps and bounds. Again, from the shy little girl to, what you see here today. It's been just an amazing road, an amazing journey, and one day I might sit down and do a memoir.
Right.
And write about it and share it.
Tell us how you went from that shy person to that person that now loves her voice. What was that in between like?
I was a professional student in that I learned early on how to identify my strengths and weaknesses. For example, I have never liked talking on the telephone. So whereas most teen girls be laying up on the phone, talking on the phone, I never liked talking on the telephone. So I identified that as one of my weaknesses. So for example, as a teen, I know, I can send emails and text messages all day long, but I'm not the one to get on the phone. So I got to have somebody on my team that don't mind talking on the phone,
right.
Because that's an identified weakness. So it really was about, okay, where am I good? What do I need help with? And how do I get there? So that's what I mean by being a professional student. I love books. I've always loved books. So, back when we had to actually go to the library to consume some books, love my highlighters, again, color-coded calendar. I like all that kind of nerdy stuff. So that was a part of the process, but going and finding the information that's going to make me better. It's always about making yourself better. For me, that's what it was. Like, okay, what am I going to work on now? For example, I'll tell you how big of a nerd I was. The summer between 5th and 6th grade, that entire summer, I spent the summer perfecting my signature.
Oh, wow. The whole entire summer.
The whole summer. I made, I worked on my handwriting first, make sure my cursive was nice. And I'm about to go to middle school. So I wanted to make sure my handwriting was good and all that. And then my signature. I wanted to, perfect that signature. So when I signed my first documents, I had it together. I was mature in my mind long before my body got there. But again, it's just a continual process. Where do I need the most help? What do I need to work on? And how am I going to do it? Who am I going to connect with? What podcast am I going to watch? What webinar, whatever, to make me better? And it's a continual process even now.
Right. Wow. So when we talk about being an author and getting out into the public and signing autographs, because you've been, doing that for quite some time now, but then also being able to actually talk with other people. Those are some things that a lot of people as authors, you want to be an author because all you have to do is write, but you think it just stops there and it does not. So the first time that you actually wrote your book and you had to actually talk to people, what was that like?
It was a different experience because it was new. It was new, but it was exciting.
Right.
Because, wow, people actually want to read what I wrote.
Right.
So it was a new experience. It was a great experience. And even now, just looking back at some of the photos from that first book signing, it's still exciting because this is the next step on my new journey. So it's almost like, when you become a mother, they bring you the baby and when I had my kids, I had never even changed a diaper before.
Oh, wow.
Never, not one. So, every step was a new part of the experience. So that's what it was really like for me. And, that's why I desired to be that book strategist because, not everyone can go online or go to, a podcast webinar and figure it out. Right. You need somebody to take you by the hand and show you the steps of the way. So for those people, particularly those who are desiring to be first-time authors that need somebody to kind of show them the way, I want to be the person to do that. Awesome. So that's why, I wanted to, start my own company and do the book coaching and do the publishing and help other people because, there are people out there who want to do it and have great stories that need to be, documented and shared, but they just don't know the process.
Right. Well, you're doing an amazing job. I've been watching you. I'm a, cyber stalker. So I've been watching you and I see that you are out in the world and you're making a difference. And I want to thank you personally for doing that.
Thank you. That means a lot.
You're welcome. Where is it that our viewers can reach you? How can they find you? Tell us about your books. Okay. Tell us about what you have going on next.
All right.
Let us know. What's up?
All right. So the best place to get in touch with me is on my website, which is www.clairealdin.com. That's CLAIREALDIN.com, clairealdin.com. That's the best place to connect with me because we have our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram links on there as well. If you want to connect with me personally, you can find me at Dr. DC Matthews. That's DRDCMATTHEWS. Dr. DC Matthews. That's on Twitter and Instagram. I have a Claire Alden Publications Facebook page as well as a Dr. DC Matthews author Facebook page. So if you connect with me on any of those platforms, you'll be able to see what's going on, what's coming up next, and be able to connect, ask questions, and find out what's coming up.
Awesome. What can you leave us with? Give us something that will take us through to next Wednesday.
All right. Well, something to take us through till next Wednesday. As you're going through this process, think about what your legacy will be. So whether you're an author, an aspiring author, a writer, publisher, playwright, whatever your role is, what is it that you want your legacy to be? So, when you're no longer here, what is it that you've left behind to make an impact in this world?
Wow. On that note, we're going to say good night. This has been the Conversations with Mann show. Thank you.
Good night.